Saving is not really something we think about too often when we're playing video games nowadays. It's usually done automatically and it's relatively hassle-free, but it wasn't always this way. Before, video games just didn't save, so if the power went out or someone slipped on a cable, all your progress in Mega Man, just gone. While your game system is turned on, the game can store and process your data in RAM. That's easy. But problems start arising when you want to store player data after the game console is turned off. Saving your progress in a video game requires some method of maintaining your data after your game system loses power. This can typically be done with some sort of data storage device like a memory card or an external drive. These devices are non-volatile, meaning they store data even after your console turns off and they don't have power. Another technique game developers used was batteries. Think about it. If your game loses your data after losing power, just don't lose power. Games would include a battery connected to a RAM chip to keep it powered until the battery died. These batteries could potentially last decades as they didn't have a ton of stuff they had to waste energy on. However, recently tons of old game batteries have begun to die, so make sure you guys go check your old games to make sure you haven't lost any data. While these methods of game saving are very effective, they do cost money, and as we all know, game developers love to save money. So early game designers came up with a pretty clever, completely free method to save their players' progress without using some form of a data storage device. And that method is passwords. Passwords are really cool. If you beat a level or you die, games will give you a password for you to write down that you can use to get back to where you left off. If you were over at a friend's house, you could use the password you got from your copy to continue from where you left off over at their place, which was also really cool. It reminds me of the way memory cards could be used to continue your game on another system back in the day. Passwords are usually a bunch of random letters and numbers, although some games use symbols like Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, who use different colored beans, and Mega Man 2, who use dots on a grid. Dragon's Lair on the Super Nintendo actually made you play a weird ball minigame to input your password, and in some versions of the game, you can even die in the password screen. Some passwords are pretty short, but some might as well be a book. At the end of the day, they all serve the same function of saving your game. But saying passwords save your game is a little bit of a fib. Passwords don't really save your game, they simply allow you to enter a code that the game can decode to determine what was true about your game when you left off. Some games only save what level you were on, like the greatest game of all time, Blue Sphere. It doesn't save how many times you've died or what levels you completed, but then again, it doesn't really need to. Some password systems, though, actually do store a lot of your information, like the passwords in Metroid, which store everything from the number of missile upgrades you have to which bosses you've defeated. Considering Metroid is not a straightforward level-to-level type of game, and more of an open-ended experience where you can accomplish tasks at your own pace, a more complex password system is necessary. Most of the time, passwords just look like a bunch of randomly generated characters, but from the way math and probability work, it's almost guaranteed that some of the passwords are going to spell out actual words. And sometimes, those words can be a little naughty. Like this password in the original Metroid that hilariously spawned you in the last area of the game with tons of power-ups and the final boss already defeated. There's also this password that crashes the game. Apparently, this code only works in very specific versions of the original NES game. On most of, if not all of Nintendo's official emulators like the Wii Virtual Console, the password doesn't work and sends you to the title screen, or like in the case of the Switch version, it just completely crashes the program. But hey, I know what you guys are here for. You guys have probably already seen those passwords before, so let me give you guys the good stuff. A couple of spicy passwords you've never seen before. But before we get started, do you guys know what time it is?
Pizza time!
Sorry, I have just really been enjoying Pizza Tower, but yeah, this code spawns you in Ridley's lair with all of the energy tanks and most of the power-ups besides the Morph Ball and the Long Beam, with the final boss already dead. Speaking of pizza, if you guys decide to go to a pizza restaurant to get something to eat, heads up to all my waiters and waitresses, cause Yoshi doesn't leave tips. This one spawns you as Zero Suit Samus in the final area of the game with tons of missiles and almost all of the energy tanks, plus half of the power-ups. If you do want to bring someone along with you to enjoy cheesy cuisine, I want to warn you guys, don't bring your girlfriends, cause Sonic likes booty. This one spawns you in Kraid's lair with the final boss already beat. Passwords are awesome, but like I mentioned, they aren't really saving your game. So instead, let's talk about games that actually do save your progress. Usually this will either be automatic, where the game is pre-programmed to save your game at specific places or at specific intervals, and you might see a little notification telling you the game did so. Or the game will make you save manually, or it could be a combination of them both. In the early days of game saves, you usually only got a couple of slots that you could use for saving. If you had a big family, or maybe you wanted to replay a game, then you had to consider potentially deleting your old saves to make room for new files. But over time, as storing game saves became less expensive, games began to allow you to have dozens of save files. Unless you're Pokemon, which after being a series for more than 25 years, still only lets you have one save file. So I hope you're prepared to delete your childhood save file if you ever want to play Pokemon again. Unless you're willing to shell out the cash for another copy of the game, of course. If a game is generous, it'll let you save manually at any time, but some games will only allow you to save at specific points, typically referred to as save points. They might even have an in-universe action for saving, like your character writing in a journal in Always Sometimes Monsters, or Ness calling his dad in Earthbound, or in the case of No More Heroes, dropping a fat dump. If the game is downright stingy, then it may make getting to save points particularly difficult. In a way, a save point is like a reward for completing a significant part of the gameplay. In particularly difficult or stressful games where you're in enemy territory just trying to survive, a save point is a godsend. There might even be a special room for saving, making the place feel like a sanctuary, a brief respite from all of the chaos. If the save point is a room, then expect an absolutely great, chill, calming song to go along with it. But if game designers are really mean, they'll limit your ability to save. Donkey Kong Country 2 makes you pay coins to save. Probably the most iconic example of using saving as a resource is Resident Evil. In many of the early games, you can't just save in a save room. Saving is done with a typewriter in a save room, so logically, it makes sense that a typewriter needs ink, meaning to save, you need to find ink ribbons scattered around the map. These ink ribbons are also limited. There isn't an infinite amount of these things lying around in the mansion, so you really need to think about when and where you should save. This definitely adds another layer of tension to this survival horror game, but I still think if you do something like limiting when a player can save, you should give the player the ability to use a temporary save. Normal saves, or a better name for this might be permanent saves, allow you to return to that point when you save at any time. But temporary saves, aka quick saves, go away the first time you load your data. Imagine you're playing Resident Evil and your mom says it's time for bed. You just gotta leave your system on all night if you don't have quick saves. Most of the time, save data for a game is only useful for the game it was created for, but some games actually give you bonuses for having saved data for other games. Like how in Overwatch 2, you automatically unlock Kiriko if you played Overwatch 1. In Deltarune, your choices carry over from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2, allowing you to truly continue your adventure. In LEGO Star Wars 2, you could import your unlocked characters from the first game to the second game. You could see it as a cheap way to encourage customer loyalty, but I still think it's a nice way for the game developers to say, thanks for playing our other games. Saving has evolved to the point where now we have cloud saves that are stored online, meaning you don't even have to personally keep a copy of your save at all. No more passwords, memory cards, or hard drives. Saving games is something that's so common now that we don't think too much about it, but it's so crucial. Next time you see that save button, just take a second to appreciate it.